Okay, so you want to own a poultry farm, buy some chicks, feed them, collect the eggs or sell the meat, and watch the money roll in. Chickens are everywhere. People eat them every single day. How hard can it possibly be? Here is the reality. The global poultry industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars every year. Demand has never been higher, and yet poultry farms fail constantly. Experienced farmers with decades behind them go bankrupt. New investors pour everything they have into a flock and lose it in a single weekend. The business that looks the most straightforward from the outside is one of the most punishing from the inside. Why do some farmers become millionaires while others go bankrupt? Why can one disease wipe out years of investment overnight? And where does the real money in this business actually come from? To understand any of that, we have to start at the very beginning and build this thing from scratch. The first decision you have to make is what kind of poultry farm you are actually running, because that phrase covers several completely different businesses. Broiler farming means raising chickens specifically for meat.
Layer farming means keeping hens to produce eggs. Breeder farms raise parents, whose job is to produce fertilized eggs for hatcheries, and hatcheries take those eggs, incubate them, and sell day-old chicks to grow-out farms. Each of these businesses has a completely different cost structure, a different risk profile, and a different relationship with the market. Choosing the wrong one is how many people lose money before a single bird ever gets sick. We are going to focus on the two models most people actually enter: broiler farming and layer farming. And we are going to walk through what it actually costs to build one, run one, and whether the numbers at the end of the year make any sense. Start with the land. This is where most people make their first expensive mistake. They look for the cheapest plot they can find, buy it, and discover 6 months later why it was cheap. A commercial poultry operation cannot be placed just anywhere. There are distance requirements from neighboring properties, from residential areas, from schools and churches, and from other farms.
In North Carolina, for example, regulations require that your poultry houses sit at least 500 feet from any non-owned residence, and that distance jumps to 1,200 feet if you are near a school or church. In South Carolina, that residential setback is 1,000 feet. If you are in a state with strict environmental rules, you might need a site that allows for 130 to 300 acres just to satisfy the legal buffers, even if you only plan to build 4 chicken houses. Beyond the rules, there is the practical reality. Your farm needs 3-phase electrical power, the heavy-duty industrial power that runs large ventilation fans and climate systems. It needs a reliable water source, capable of delivering dozens of gallons per minute during a hot summer day. It needs road access, strong enough for heavy feed delivery trucks, far enough from other poultry operations to prevent disease spreading between farms. Rural land that looks like a bargain often has none of these things. Buy cheap land at $3,000 per acre across 20 acres, and you are at $60,000. Then you discover the nearest 3-phase electrical connection is a mile away, and running it to your site costs $80,000. The road needs reinforcing for another $30,000. You need a well, which, depending on depth, runs $15,000 to $50,000. Suddenly, the cheap land costs 2 to 3 times the headline number. All in, a viable commercial site in the United States realistically costs $150,000 to $300,000 once you factor in access and infrastructure. Now you build. This is where the capital commitment becomes serious. A modern commercial chicken house is not a barn. It is an engineered, climate-controlled building designed to keep thousands of animals alive and growing in conditions that do not occur naturally. Modern broiler houses in the United States are typically about 500 feet long and 40 to 50 feet wide. That is a building around 20,000 square feet, and you will not be running one. To get to a commercially viable operation, you need at minimum 4 of them. The housing itself costs between $20 and $30 per square foot to build to modern standards, including the foundation, insulation, and the sealed envelope. For 4 houses at 20,000 feet each, that is 80,000 square feet of building.
At $25 per square foot on average, you are looking at $2 million just in basic structure before you put anything inside. Then come the systems. Every house needs a tunnel ventilation system. These are large exhaust fans typically 56 inches in diameter, installed at one end of the building. During summer, they pull air through the entire length of the house to create wind movement that cools the birds through what is essentially the same effect as a breeze on your skin. A single house typically requires 10 to 12 of these fans. Each one costs around $700 to $1,000. Then, you need evaporative cooling pads on the opposite end, water lines running the full length of the house for the pads, and a circulation pump. That system per house runs another $30,000 to $50,000 installed. Inside the house, you need automated feeding lines. These are auger systems that carry feed from a storage bin outside down the full length of the building and distribute it into pan feeders that the birds eat from. You need enclosed nipple drinker lines that deliver clean water without wetting the bedding, which is critical because wet litter causes disease. Full automated feeding and watering for one house costs roughly $30,000 to $60,000. Every single house needs to stay at the right temperature. For day-old chicks, that means 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit in the first week of life. You need propane or natural gas heaters for winter and early bird placement. For summer, those fans have to run constantly, and they run on electricity. Heating and cooling infrastructure per house adds another $20,000 to $40,000. Now, the part that cannot be skipped under any circumstances: you need an emergency generator. A diesel standby generator large enough to power all 4 houses costs between $50,000 and $150,000, depending on capacity. You absolutely need one. We will come back to why in a moment. You also need feed storage bins, biosecurity infrastructure, including disinfection stations and perimeter fencing, a small office, and facilities to handle dead birds, because some birds will always die, and you cannot simply leave them in the house.
When you add all of this up, for a 4-house broiler complex in the United States, you are looking at total capital investment that ranges from $1.2 million on the low end to over $2 million for a fully modern automated facility. That is before you place a single bird. So let us talk about the birds. The chickens used in commercial poultry production are not generic farm chickens. They are precision-engineered genetic hybrids developed by global breeding companies like Cobb Vantris and Aviagen in the broiler sector, and Highline and Lumen in the laying hen sector. These are patented genetics, the product of decades of selective breeding. The birds you buy are specialized tools. For broilers, day-old chicks cost between 30 and 60 cents each. A 4-house complex at standard stocking density holds somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 birds per flock. At 50 cents per chick on average, that is $40,000 to $50,000 just for the chicks every single time you start a new flock. For layer hens, you can either buy day-old chicks and raise them yourself until they start laying at around 16 to 18 weeks, or you can buy what are called point-of-lay pullets, which are young hens ready to start producing eggs. Point-of-lay pullets cost between $3 and $5 each. If you are running a 60,000 bird layer operation, buying point-of-lay birds costs you between $180,000 and $300,000 every time you restock the flock, which typically happens every 12 to 14 months. And here is the part about genetics that most people underestimate. The breed you choose sets the ceiling on everything.
Modern broiler hybrids, like the Cobb 500, are engineered to reach market weight in 42 to 48 days, consuming about 13 to 16 pounds of feed in total. That efficiency is built into the genetics. Source cheaper, lower performance birds to save money on the chick price, and you pay for it through worse feed conversion and slower growth, which costs far more across a flock than you ever saved at purchase. Now, the biggest line item of all? Feed. This is not a secondary cost. In commercial poultry production, feed accounts for 50 to 70% of your total operating costs. Everything else, the building, the utilities, the labor, together adds up to less than what you spend on feed. If you do not understand feed, you do not understand the business. Commercial poultry feed is primarily a mix of corn, which makes up around 55 to 65% of the ration, and soybean meal, which makes up around 25 to 35%. The rest is synthetic vitamins, minerals, and enzyme additives. The price of this feed moves with the global commodity markets for corn and soybeans.
In the United States, commercial broiler feed typically costs between $350 and $500 per metric ton, depending on when you are buying and what the grain markets are doing. A broiler bird eats roughly 7 to 8 kilograms of feed over its entire life, from day one to slaughter. Multiply that across 100,000 birds, and you are talking about 700 to 800 metric tons of feed per flock. At $400 per ton, that is $280,000 to $320,000 in feed costs per flock. And this is where a concept called feed conversion ratio becomes the most important number on your farm. Feed conversion ratio, often shortened to FCR, is simply how many kilograms of feed it takes to produce 1 kilogram of live bird weight. A good modern broiler flock achieves an FCR of around 1.60. That means for every 1.6 kilograms of feed you put in, you get 1 kilogram of bird. A poorly managed flock, or one with disease pressure, might achieve an FCR of 1.9 or 2.0. That difference sounds small. It is not.
Consider a flock of 1 million birds at a target live weight of 2.75 kilograms each. At an FCR of 1.60, you need 4.4 million kilograms of feed. At 1.65, you need 4.5 million kilograms. At $400 per metric ton, that difference is $55,000 for a single flock on a single farm. Across multiple farms, over a full year running 5 or 6 flocks, poor feed conversion can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to a well-managed operation running the same genetics. Water, electricity, and temperature are the 3 variables that determine whether your feed conversion is good or terrible. Which brings us to the utility systems. A laying hen drinks roughly 2 cups of water every day. A market weight broiler during a hot summer day can drink even more. Water is not just a comfort for these animals. It is a nutrient. Consumption is also your early warning system. If a house full of birds starts drinking less water than the day before, something is wrong. It might be a disease, a drinker malfunction, or a water quality issue. Experienced farm managers track water meters daily, the way a doctor tracks a patient's vital signs.
Electricity is the biggest utility bill on the farm, running 12 to 16 large tunnel fans continuously during summer, plus automated feeding systems, climate controllers, egg gathering belts on a layer operation, and lighting programs can cost between $4,000 and $8,000 per month per house complex during peak summer. Annual electricity bills for a 4-house broiler operation typically run between $40,000 and $60,000. Propane for heating adds another significant line in colder months. Brooding costs, meaning the extra heat required for the first 2 weeks when chicks need temperatures near 90 degrees, can add $5,000 to $10,000 per flock in winter conditions. Now, back to that generator, because this is where we need to talk about what can go wrong in under 20 minutes. A 4-house broiler complex at market weight holds up to 30,000 to 40,000 fully grown birds per house. Each bird generates significant body heat. The only thing keeping the temperature inside that house at safe levels is those fans running continuously.
If the main power grid goes down on a 95-degree summer afternoon and your generator fails to start automatically, the temperature inside the house begins rising almost immediately. Within 15 to 20 minutes, internal temperatures cross critical thresholds. Within an hour, you can lose the entire house. That is $800,000 to $1 million of live inventory per house gone in less time than it takes to watch a movie. This is not a hypothetical. It happens. Power outages hit farms. Generators fail. Experienced operators test their generators weekly and, in some cases, run dual redundant systems because a single failure event dwarfs years of maintenance spending. If you are finding this breakdown useful so far, hit subscribe and give this video a like. It genuinely helps this channel keep going and reach more people who want to understand how these businesses actually work. Now, let us talk about the cost that nobody puts in their business plan until it destroys them. Disease. Commercial poultry houses keep thousands of animals living in close proximity.
That density is what makes the economics work, and it is also what makes disease outbreaks catastrophic. A pathogen that might kill a handful of birds in a backyard flock will tear through a commercial house in days. The most feared disease in the industry is highly pathogenic avian influenza, commonly known as bird flu.
This strain of influenza can kill virtually the entire flock within 24 to 48 hours of visible symptoms appearing. When a confirmed case is detected, government authorities do not give you options. They come in, depopulate every bird on the property, quarantine the surrounding area, and ban all poultry movement in the region. In the United States, the HPA outbreak of 2022 and 2023 resulted in the loss of over 58 million birds across the country, the largest outbreak in U.S. history. For individual producers caught in an infected zone, it meant months of zero income while facilities sat empty under quarantine, followed by extensive cleaning and disinfection before restocking was permitted.
Newcastle disease is another severe viral threat. It attacks the respiratory, nervous, and digestive systems simultaneously. A severe outbreak can push flock mortality above 50% while destroying egg production and layer operations. It spreads through contaminated equipment, shared vehicles, and wild birds. Then there is coccidiosis, caused by microscopic parasites that live in soil and litter. They attack the intestinal lining of young birds, preventing nutrient absorption. A flock with coccidiosis eats feed but cannot convert it. FCR climbs, birds grow slower, and secondary bacterial infections, called necrotic enteritis, follow right behind, adding significant mortality. The biosecurity system designed to prevent all of this is not a single fence or a bottle of disinfectant. It is a set of protocols that applies to every vehicle, every person, and every piece of equipment that approaches the farm. Every delivery truck must stop at a disinfection station before approaching the houses.
Farm workers who have visited another poultry farm, been around wild birds, or returned from international travel must wait 72 hours before entering the production area. Workers entering the houses change clothing and footwear completely with full shower and procedures at larger operations. Perimeter fencing keeps wildlife away. Dead bird disposal follows strict protocols to prevent pathogen spread. The cost of all this biosecurity is real, but it's modest compared to a single disease event. A comprehensive vaccination program covering infectious bronchitis, Marek's disease, Newcastle, and Gomoro costs only a few cents per bird. A single HPI outbreak forcing depopulation of 100,000 birds costs several $100,000 in immediate losses, before you count downtime, cleaning, and months without income. The USDA offers cost-sharing programs, reimbursing up to 75% of biosecurity infrastructure improvements for farms that implement approved prevention frameworks. Most experienced operators apply. It is not charity, it is federally backed risk management.